Hi, this is Jenny, and I want to share with you what I've learned about doing gradients and using CSS to create them. And so to start with, a gradient is a smooth transition between colors. And because of that, you need a minimum of two colors or color stops to create a gradient, but you can use multiple colors if you wanted to. You're not limited to two. Prior to being able to do this in CSS with the gradient properties is you would have to create an image that would have to be built into your web page. This could increase load time and bandwidth user and getting your website loaded from a user perspective. And when you zoom in or if it's changing sizes, it didn't always respond the best way. And so doing them in CSS is just a much better user experience. So there's two basic type of gradients. One is a linear gradient, which is the first one we're going to talk about, and that's where it's doing that color transition or gradient in a line. And that could either be a vertical line, a horizontal line, a diagonal line. By default, it's going to build your gradient from top to bottom. And so this image here is the default where you just define that I want a linear gradient for my background, and I'm going from red to blue. There's some purple in here because as it combines those two colors together and they overlap, it creates purple. In this other example here in the lower left, I'm basically doing a vertical gradient and I'm going left to right. And so I'm saying to right. So that means I'm going to start from the left, I'm going to the right. And then the diagonal, you would just specify you want to go to which corner. So in this case, I'm going to the bottom right corner. If you want to have a little more flexibility or control over that transition line, then you can use angles. And angles, you're defining the relationship or the angle between the horizontal line and the gradient line that you want. And so in this first example, I did a 90-degree gradient, which 90 degrees from a horizontal line is a vertical straight up and down line. And so it's very similar to if I were to define it to left to right. In this case, so I did a negative number. And so by default, these are going to go left to right. And you put in your measurement for the angle and DEG for the degree. Since I have a negative number, though, it's going to go from right to left. And so my colors are red, blue, green. And you can see as you go through this that's how it's transitioning across as it goes over. And then you can also, in my other example here off to the right, I did a 75-degree angle, which is going to basically create a diagonal gradient, but it's not exactly at a 45-degree angle, and it just kind of gives it a different look, a different feel that you can have. So the other type of gradient that you can do is called a radial gradient, where it's basically defined or built from the center out. And these are going to be a circular type shape. And so on here, there's three basic settings. It's your shape, which is a circle or ellipse. It's the size in relation to the closest side, furthest side, closest corner, furthest corner. And the position is where is it at within the area. So by default, it's going to use the ellipse from the furthest corner and a center position. And so this first example up here in the upper right-hand corner is just the default. I'm using the radial gradient property, and I've got my three colors, and this is what it does. And this second example just underneath it, what I've done is defined a larger size for the blue, and then I made the other colors larger based on that. Playing around with this, I would just say you always want your numbers, their sizes to get bigger as you go, but you can see it really changed the look of just kind of playing with these sizes. This example here in the bottom right, I'm doing a circle shape, and so I've defined before my colors to use a circle. And then in these middle two, or these last two examples in the center and then to the right, I'm playing with here the size and positioning of the overall gradient. So this first one in the center, I'm building it based off the closest side, and I'm doing it at a 10%, 40%. So 10% is left to right, and the 40% or the second number is going to be top to bottom. And what I found was as these numbers were closer to the middle, like 50% between 1 and 100, so that middle area, that's going to get you to the middle of what you're defining here. So 10% is going to be really close to this closest edge. 40% up is going to move it up some, but just a little above center. Okay. This other example here to the left, I'm basically doing a farthest side. So exact same setup as what I had in the center, but now I'm within 10% of the furthest side, still 40% up and down. And you can just see how that changed, how the overall piece looked. And that was the only change I made between the two of them. The other thing you can set up are repeating gradients. And you do this by adding repeating in front of your property name. And so this top one is a repeating linear gradient. And what I found here with the numbers, same thing, is you want your numbers to get bigger as you go across. And so I'm doing it to the left. So it's building from the right to the left. It's starting with purple, orange, green, and then repeating over and over again until the space is filled out. If I used bigger numbers here, it would increase the size basically of these columns. And so you wouldn't get as many repetitions. This lower left-hand one is a radial gradient. I set it up to be a repeating gradient, but I didn't put any numbers in here. And so what happened here is it basically just did the gradient between all the different colors, but it didn't repeat them. And so off to then the right is the exact same setup, but the only difference is I went in here and put numbers, and I just kept it even between my colors. So I started out basically at 0, and then 5, 10, 15, 20, and it just kept repeating that all the way out. So the other thing you can do using a gradient is to basically create transparencies, which is a fading effect from color to white, where it's just fading out. And to do this, it requires using the RGB function, and there's an extra, or the RGBA. So RGB is 3 colors. It's how you could define color on a computer or device. And then there's an extra number here, which is going to be a 0 or 1. The 0 meaning fully transparent, which is this white area, and 1 being full color, which is the top area. So here I'm building to the top. So I'm building from the bottom to the top. I'm starting with full transparency and going up to full color. Here underneath that, I'm doing the same thing with a radial gradient. I defined it to be a circle. I've defined that I want my circle at 50%, so it makes this circle larger. And I'm going from a transparency out to a full color. So I really enjoyed putting all this together and playing with the gradients. Once you got a feel for it, was really easy to just kind of change some numbers or move things around and see the effect and find something that I wanted. So here are my little final example. I've kind of just mixed the best of everything all together. And so I'm doing a repeating radial gradient. It's using a circle built to the closest corner, but I've got it at 15%. And then both up and down and to the corner. And then I'm doing a building from a transparency to a color. And then I've added in some other colors. And so it's just repeating that over and over and over and over again. And so anyway, let me know if you have any questions or any thoughts. Like I said, I really enjoyed playing with this and putting this together. So I look forward to your feedback. Thanks.